Welcome to Rauta. This video is done in commercial collaboration with our sponsor, Steelfest. Welcome to Rauta's Underground Trio. Once again, we have three different bands of three different styles, and all of these bands are something that are still in the very beginning of their careers, having maximum 2 albums out. And once again, in Underground Trio ways, we go from worst to best, according to my personal ranking anyway. But these bands are all different styles and, different genres, so doesn't make much of a sense to compare them to one another. Let's just say this, my ranking goes with my personal preferences, and by no means it is anything like written in stone. You choose what to listen to and what not, and I'm just merely to give you a little bit of pointers here and obviously a little bit of criticism when it comes to the albums in question. First, we'll go to Italy with the traditional heavy metal style, and this one is Konquest with K, second album Time and Tyranny, and this one is quite new indeed. I mean, founded in 2019 and first demo 2020. So what is there to tell about this band? Well, first of all, let's say that this is the kind of a heavy metal worship band that you are not expect to do anything new, unique, or just break down the barriers and all that stuff. This is not a genre defining thing, but more like Iron Maiden worship, and well, a little bit more than that. And as you can probably see, some people really like this kind of stuff. 4 reviews averaging 92% on or 93% on Metal Archives, and that should tell you something. I guess it really tells you. I haven't read them and I won't be reading them because I don't need other people's opinion mess up with my head and all that stuff. But I guess that kind of tells you this is the kind of a heavy metal that you might like if you're into old school heavy metal. Now, if you're not, however, might be something that you just can skip and ignore. Now comes the tricky part. I like old school heavy metal when it's done right and well done, properly executed, good sound, good vocalist, and all that. You get the idea. That applies to bands like Iron Maiden or Wasp, my personal favorite, or bands like Manowar. So I don't claim to be this kind of a heavy metal fanatic, but I do love old school heavy metal when it's done right. And unfortunately, not a lot of heavy metal bands do that right. For first of all, a couple of reasons. Many fail in songwriting. Yes, even Iron Maiden started to fail, if you ask me, after 80s. I mean, it was kind of a slippery slope down the a hill, kind of a decline, and it hasn't been really doing the kind of a trick for me after that. So even old school bands, who have been very talented can fail. So how does Conquest compare to that? The short answer is it doesn't do that exactly well. That is not to say this album is useless or bad, by no means, but it's kind of a lukewarm experience. So coming from this kind of a worship band, throughout these 30 minutes and then some, you kind of run through the kind of a run to the mill kind of a heavy metal, which is definitely nodding to directions such as new wave of British heavy metal. That is kind of a 80s style, not so much as the 70s when things were quite different. And everything from production to songwriting is, quite okay. But does quite okay really cut it? I mean, we are looking for some good albums, some memorable tunes, songs that, really make us to bang our head and raise our fist and all that stuff. And in my opinion, Time and Tyranny doesn't really any of that. Now, all the songs are very listenable, make no mistake. They are something that you can just kind of nod to and raise your elbow to the beer counter and just like keep sipping, and you're like, yeah, this is kind of a listenable. But once you're done with your beer pint, you're just gonna forget this album if you ask me. But like said, some people are really, really praising this kind of stuff. So maybe if you are more hardcore heavy metal fanatic than me, maybe this is indeed something that you might really like. But I would say a word of warning. Unless you are one of those heavy metal fanatics, you probably don't feel much about this album. Because like I said, all the songwriting, all the guitar leads, solos, not to mention, vocals, nothing really is fantastic. It's more like one of those albums that is very easy to listen and then just forget and move on rather than anything else. So my verdict is 6 out of 10. It isn't bad, but really, is 6 out of 10 really enough for you to invest in it? Well, you will find out, and links are provided in the description box as always. The second band in this review video is very different style. It comes from Czechia and it's the first album by Ablaze. These guys are no newbies. They have lots of different bands among the history. One could even say that this is some kind of a side project by these guys because they have other bands. So what does have Live Desecration, the debut album by the band, to offer? Well, first of all, this one is pretty much like the previous one, some 30 minutes, and then you boom, done. This is pretty much Angel Corpse making love to a Marduk and having a baby. So yes, kind of a fierce and fast death metal marrying a fierce and fast black metal one. And now you might think, okay, it must be really good because Marduk is good and Angel Corpse are good. They're almost like arm wrestling which one is actually better, especially when it comes to the best albums by each band. I would say Angel Corpse might be on average a little bit better than Marduk, but then again Marduk has, in my opinion anyway, better album. So there you have it, but two great bands compared into something that is kind of a lukewarmish. Yeah, I feel like it's a kind of a shame because this band could have a lot of potential. I mean, it's very aggressive, it's fast tempo, and it's just kind of raining down war and, hellfire all upon you, and you should be like ready. Yeah, this is something that should be nailing it. Because why not? I mean, Angel Corpse and Marduk. What do you have to lose? Now the thing here is, when you recycle the worst riffs instead of the best ones, this is what happens. It's more like you understand about speed, you understand about including death metal and black metal and just putting them together. But where this fails is there are no really good songs. Like if you just remove the fast tempo from the equation and start looking at the riffs or more like listening to them, you will find out there's nothing, absolutely nothing new, phenomenal, unique, wow moment kind of a thing what this album has to offer. Surely it offers you a short period of aggression and kind of a energy which might really do the trick. But once again, is that enough? I mean, there are plenty of bands doing death black metal, fast tempo, or whatever, which are failing to do proper death metal and proper black metal. And it doesn't really help you when you just kind of force them together. Surely there are bands which do this style well, but in my opinion, Live Desecration is just one of those kind of a side projects which is very easy to just forget. Is this one of those COVID pandemic times side ventures that you decided to do when you had too much time in your hands? I don't know, but the timing would kind of fit. Coming out in late 2022 means that this was probably done already in 2021, maybe even earlier, and probably a lot of those, guys had a lot of free time. I don't know, maybe the next album will be honing and taking this team and this style to a next level, but this is not an album you are going to be ashamed of if you miss this one. It's not a great one, it's very lukewarm, even if totally different genre than the previous one. Which brings us to the best of the pile, and this one is Raw End of Black Metal. Now coming with a horrible name in my opinion, Lord Valtgryftåke. This is kind of a cringy if you ask me. A guy from Chile naming the band name as if it was, one of those Norwegian black metal superstars, and then doing kind of a Norwegian black metal worship band. It gets kind of awkward, but if we put that thing aside, this debut album, Buried Under the Carved Runes, is actually pretty promising of an album. Now, raw black metal it is, and mostly reminding me of great, but in my opinion, underrated, probably not that known Norwegian solo project Ildiarn. Once again, this runs less than 40 minutes, and the songs are pretty short and sweet. I mean, 11 tracks fit into some 39 minutes. Gives you a little bit of insight what's going on. And These riffs are very, very simple, bare bone and stripped down to very basics. I mean, you have these kind of very simple riffs, which sometimes remind me of Dark Throne, which is definitely a great thing. But I'm not talking about exactly the golden era of Dark Throne, but a little bit later on, but still good enough. And also a lot of Ildiarn worships, like almost punky, crusty kind of a simplistic, raw, primitive black metal. Now, definitely not for people who are mostly like listening to black metal and then dropping names like Behemoth or Satyricon, Emperor, Dimmu Borgir, and the like. The more you have symphonic or keyboard elements or more melodic or epic moments, even if it's bands like later Immortal or whatever, you're probably not gonna like this. But if you're in the raw end of black metal, if you think even Burzum is like too atmospheric and all that stuff, if you want to go to the regions of bands like Sword Vokter and Illion, of course, well, then you might be in for a treat. Now, however, even I keep comparing this to Illion a lot because this is definitely the band that this reminds me of most. Doesn't mean that this is exactly as good as that, but this has the potential to be reaching to that level if only given more time and, more focus, I guess. The songwriting is already pretty good in terms of raw and primitive black metal. Not for everybody, because this production is also, well, raw and some people might say horrible. I think it's very fitting for this kind of music, and I like those kind of raw, reverb, somewhere distant kind of a raspy, screamy vocals. Not for everybody, I get that. But once again, if you're into raw end of black metal, you might like it. In my opinion, this, for example, beats a lot of those Portuguese bands, which tend to be this kind of a French black metal rawness, worshipping kind of stuff. But they don't have these kind of riffs, which, in my opinion, Lord Valtgryftåke seems to have. So this is something very promising, in my opinion, and I think this deserves an attention. So best of the pile, if you ask me, even if not great exactly. But bands in underground trio, well, hardly are that because most of these bands are just doing their first recordings, and as such they are part of this video series. So if I got your interest in some of the bands, you will find links provided in the description box. If not, then move on and you will find plenty of new music with coming reviews and whatever. So let me know what you think about these bands, and I hope you like some of them. If you don't, too bad. If you do, that's great. See you soon with more reviews coming your way.